Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special situation happening today. I've got two guests on the screen coming in from somewhere on the east coast of the United States of America. The dynamic duo that forms Cullari and Wardell, Barbara Wardell and Ernesto Cullari. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Darren, for having us.
Thanks, Darren.
Did I pronounce the names correctly? Because us down in Australia, because we were just having a bit of a conversation before we press record about how you pronounce the word Jersey or Joyzy. Did I pronounce the names correctly?
Yes, I believe you did.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. So you guys have been running a very successful business, Cullari and Wardell ad agency, for a number of years now. And we're going to talk about all things marketing, sales, and probably touch on this concept called geofencing, which I'm really interested in delving into. And hopefully you can educate me and educate the listeners as well. Love to know, before we jump into the conversation, I always like to ask my guests their background and what led them to what they do today. So we've got the dynamic duo. So I'm not going to go to one or the other, but you guys can choose who's going to speak first.
Why don't you tell them what your background is?
So my background is I had a business background, but I've also been in the medical industry for a long period of time, specialty medicines into marketing and working with doctors and trying to figure out the protocol to help patients they're hard patients that they just can't figure out with the, on the shelf medication from the pharmaceutical company. The problem with that was we're still tied. Our hands are handcuffed and we couldn't really help the patients as the way we would want to. And it was hard. And then Ernesto and I met, and during COVID, believe it or not, there was some things that came out of good out of COVID, and that was us meeting up and starting this company together and figuring out that the special places that we love so much, the pizzerias, the little stores, that, those local ones that you feel like you're at home at, those stores started closing on us. And that was sad for us. And we wanted to figure out how we could take this technology, because it's a huge technology, GPS technology that all these corporations had access to during COVID, and using it to promote their business. How could we take that technology and scale it down to where a smaller business, mid-sized business, even a bigger business can afford to advertise? And that's what we kind of did. And I invested a ton of money, and we've just been working really hard to build it.
Nice. And from a so in the background, in terms of the medical side, were you in marketing or were you in sales in that particular realm?
I was in marketing, as well as, just trying to figure out what protocol was the best for that client. Because sometimes, with pharmaceutical medications, they're always there, they're basically two sizes. It's not made for the general public. It's just made flat. Either you cut the medication in half, or it's too much for that person, or too little. And it never really gets the situation corrected. It's just to kind of take away the, what do you call it? The symptoms, not actually fix the problem. So it was hard for me, because a lot of the medications that we made were for like autism patients.
Okay.
And those we actually put in no fillers, because they had to be used within a certain time. They couldn't be put on the shelf. So they were made for that ideal patient with natural ingredients and the stuff that we could do at the time.
Nice.
You're allowed.
Nice. And before I go to Ernesto, you mentioned that you met during COVID, and a lot of the favorite places that you like to go to were closing down. And you wanted to help them. Was there a definitive, I guess, problem in the marketplace that you identified? And I mean, we'll get into geofencing and what it means, but Was there a specific catalyst that said to you, "Hey, I've got to change careers completely, and I'm going all in on this"?
Yes. No, when I moved down to the Jersey Shore, I was doing 2,000 miles a month on my car to see my doctors. I had 250 doctors on my route. And when COVID hit, I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'd call them, check on them, make sure that they were getting their product, but I couldn't go into their offices. I
Mm,
didn't know what to do with myself. When you're working like that and then all of a sudden everything stops, you want to figure out how to help. I'm very nurturing. I'm a mom. I love to help and do things for people. And it was hard not being able to do that, sitting from home. And that
mm.
was huge. And then when I met Ernesto, we actually met at a Halloween party. He was full of makeup. he, he was a scarecrow. And yeah, so we started talking. He had a medical background as well. And so he was telling me his what was going on with him, and we figured out how to cooperate on making sure that we could help the businesses
Mm.
grow. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, if we're helping them grow, we're growing. So that's how I look at it. It's, money is great and we love money, but for me, it's like a thank you note that we
Yeah.
helped.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's like Zig Ziglar, the great man out of North America that said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll actually get everything you want as well. So, and I'm
as
very
long as
big
your heart's
on,
in the right place and your passion.
well, that's it. And I believe firmly that sales is the ultimate form of service. So if you're giving great service, then a natural recompense of that is you'll be rewarded for it. And there's nothing wrong
Yes,
with that at all. But if you're going out
absolutely.
there with commission breath all the time, then that
Then
becomes,
you're just chasing
it's
because your
not good.
clients do know when you're
Oh, of
authentic,
course.
and when
Absolutely.
you're trying to help. We're always communicating and trying to do what we can for our clients.
Yeah. And part of that will be saying no to clients because if there's not a specific fit, and you might tell me, hey, you can fit every client, but just hypothetically, if there's a client that doesn't quite fit the narrative or the service that you provide, you'd be doing them a disservice if you didn't say to them, hey, I don't think we're the right organization for you based on what you're looking to achieve. And by
And we
doing
have
that,
done that.
yeah, well, that just adds credibility, doesn't it, to what
Yeah,
you're
it
doing?
really does.
Yeah. Love it.
I'm
Love
glad that you agree with that. That's great.
it.
And I enjoy that. Not
Well,
everybody,
Well, and I've been in sales for over 20 years, and the thing that really annoys me coming out of corporate is a lot of corporates are so focused on hit the number, hit the number, hit the number, which means they almost retrofit their solution to a perceived need that they think the customer has, and then they go all in to try and push the customer to convince them that their product is the best, right? So it's closing at every opportunity, and that's where you have people with commission breath all over the place, and it doesn't create credibility in the eyes of the customer, and it certainly doesn't create long-term business relationships that are sustainable. So yeah, it's best to say no if there's no fit.
absolutely.
Love it. So Ernesto, I know you've got a slightly different background, and I read in your bio there's something about songwriting or writing a hit song. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started out as a high school dropout, and
Doesn't every successful person?
yeah, usually the good ones, right? They're either high school or college dropouts or both. So I was a high school dropout, and immediately I started selling cars. And I was a very mediocre car salesperson. That was my education. I was selling new Ford, Lincoln Mercury, and that was sort of my education right there. And then I guess 3 years into my sales education, my friends were like, "Hey, you really need to go to college." So I ended up graduating college twice, and during that time period, I want to meet women. So what do you do? If you're smart, you pick up a guitar while you're in college and you start writing music. So I started writing music and started writing professionally. I ended up having the #1 song on Disney radio for a very long time. It was "I'm Late for School Again" with Paulie Litt from the movie Speed Racer and the ABC show Hope and Faith. And then I ended up having a top 100 song in country music and a top 15 country song on the Texas music charts. I ended up graduating, studying biology and minoring philosophy, minor in Spanish. But I continued to sell cars So through college, so that made a total of about 7 years of selling cars throughout my education process. And by the time I graduated college, I was actually a good salesman. I began to understand the needs of clients more intimately and what was important to them. And rather than trying to sell them something, I learned that I was more of a matchmaker.
Mm.
And then I got into medical device sales because eventually you want to stop working 12 hours a day. So
Yeah.
worked my way into the operating room selling surgical technology to orthopedic and plastic surgeons. And in 2015, I left the medical industry and then started doing more commercial photography for like the Indigo Hotel and Hint Beauty, so organic vegan makeup companies. And then I believe Barbara and I met around 2019, 2020, and it was in the middle of COVID, and I had lost my entire business because companies, even makeup companies, we were working with makeup companies from all over the world.
Yeah.
They did not know what to do with themselves. So they basically halted advertising for 6 months.
Mm.
And during that time, a third of all small businesses were closing, both in Australia and in the United States and Canada. And because of the Orwellian lockdowns. And a
Mm.
friend of mine told me about geofencing and how satellite-based technology can be used to drive foot traffic. So during that time, Barbara and I started talking. I was already a year into geofencing, and location-based, satellite-based advertising is the only way to accurately drive and measure foot traffic. So for those who don't know what it is, geofencing is the use of satellites to draw virtual fences around areas of interest. It could be
Mm.
competitor locations. It could be places where lookalike customers congregate. And when you draw these virtual fences, you can capture every device that goes into those locations. You can anonymize them so you respect their privacy. And then you can bid for ad placement across the apps that they're in, like the weather app or news apps or various websites. You can also file them home and hijack their Wi-Fi and then
Anonymously.
yeah, we keep them
Check
anonymous.
their Wi-Fi.
So we can identify their Wi-Fi and their devices, and then we can even send them TV ads, about your business. But the beautiful part about geofencing is because we've anonymized their device, we're able to track them when they eventually come into one of our locations, one of our conversion zones. So it's really key for driving foot traffic. And from a B2B perspective, if you're trying to reach C-suite people, if you're trying to reach certain decision makers, you're able to do that contextually by the things that people read in a given region. So
Yeah.
for example, we have a commercial HVAC company that was targeting building managers, specifically looking for building managers. And in the first week with us, we were able to track down the right people for them, and they closed a $30,000 deal in the first week. And we did that through contextually targeting people that manage buildings, building managers. So foot traffic is key. Since COVID, it's been a lifesaver for many small businesses. During COVID, Chipotle used it to drive their curbside pickup business, and Burger King used it to conquest McDonald's, so that every time you were in the vicinity of a McDonald's, if in this case they were doing app-based advertising, if you had the Burger King app, which they were enticing you to do if you were in near that conversion zone, they were enticing you to download the app and then receive discounts from Burger King as opposed to going to McDonald's. So big business uses it, and we've wanted to make this available to small businesses, and we've done so successfully.
That's amazing. I'm not sure can you hear anything in the background here?
Is it hail? You have some hail
It's
over there or
hail.
what?
It's hail on. I've got a colorbond
wow.
or metal roof, and
Oh, that's great.
it wasn't meant to be raining today.
Maybe.
Wasn't meant to be
And it's
dented up with hail.
It
We're not
is
hearing it though.
absolutely. Can you hear it?
No.
You can't hear it. Wow.
So
Anyway.
it's interesting that you're having hail right now, because geofencing can be used for auto body repair places where there's hail, and that we can have weather-based, weather-triggered ads. So if you're in parts of the world or parts of the country where hail is prevalent,
Yeah.
for example, like Texas and then Oklahoma, states like that, and then throughout the Midwest, hail is a more common weather condition. So we're actually able to run location-based weather triggered ads.
And tarps and different things for storms for clients.
Amazing. That's amazing. So, Ernesto, as you were talking and describing that, and I can see how targeted your marketing for business can be to grab your ideal customer when they're in the vicinity, and then I guess repurpose and remind them of whether it be Burger King or the local pizza shop or a tarp organization. And I know you've got clients in Australia. When I travel from region to region, often the telecommunications companies will come up and you move into some sort of region. They say, hey, we are now starting to work on upgrading our network in this particular area. Now they're probably using I guess the cellular network to do that. But is there something around geofencing that's similar to that? Because I'm trying to just conceptualize this for people who are listening to say, well, okay, I can put a virtual fence around an area, but does that mean it's almost like an invasion of privacy? Or is it more a case of, hey, we're now going to make it more specific and targeted when you're in a certain location?
So Australia is unique. Also, Europe's a little unique, whereas some of the privacy rules are a little more strict.
Hmm.
So because we anonymize devices, when you walk into a geofence, as long as you have your location services on, we have the right to identify, anonymize, and then advertise to your device. There are
Yeah.
unique challenges in Australia. One of the first things we do when we work with a client there, we're actually the only company in Australia doing geofencing.
Okay.
We know this because multiple people have reached out to us saying they've done their due diligence and they couldn't find a single company in Australia to fulfill the services that we provide. Then one of the first things we do, however, is due diligence, and we will do a listening campaign, which means we will draw a radius around a certain location, could be an entire city, and then, or it could be discrete buildings. And then we try to identify the number of devices that can be detected in that virtual fence. And if we are unable to identify a good multitude of devices, what we then do instead is more what's called geo-targeting. So
Mm.
geofencing is highly specific. You draw a virtual fence around a building or set of buildings, and then you go about targeting those devices. But we also do geo-targeting. If geofencing is unsuccessful because we're unable to detect enough devices, what we then do is we draw more like a radius. We might draw a 5-mile radius, a 10-mile radius, depending on what part of Australia we're in. And then
Yeah.
we will then target people based more like on demographic information and their location. So
Mm.
we're then, it's more of a, I don't want to say a shotgun blast, but it's more of a little broad-based advertising, still way more specific
Yeah.
than just running your run-of-the-mill display ads or
Mm.
just, running a TV ad. These are still highly targeted. We could still put some criteria on there, like the presence of children, or we can just, advertise to physicians. We can still specify, but then it's in a radius.
Mm.
So depending on what country you're in, there are different rules. In Australia is a little more challenging, but we do our due diligence to make sure that we're either able to measure, and we have different parts, different cities in Australia, we're able to detect a lot of devices and others we're not. So
Yes.
when we're not, we go to plan B, and plan B is just a little more broad-based. You're starting to look at 5-mile radius instead of precise buildings,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, it could be very lucrative for a business.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we
I
do have
guess,
a
sorry,
client.
Barbara.
I'm sorry. We do have a client that we only do geo-targeting for geofencing for in an area because he didn't want to do the targeting. Remember?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we can still do it. We may not be able to track the way we normally track, but
Yeah.
then we would rely on the customer saying there was customers coming in, and that's what he does. And
Right.
he's so
Yeah.
happy. He's giving us another couple of businesses.
Yeah. So that's right. We can identify devices and advertise to those devices, but
Yeah.
depending on the rules or the setup in that given region of the country, we may not be able to measure the conversion by satellite, by
Mm.
GPS, but we definitely know that we're able to at least send the ad and to
Yeah.
distribute and publish the ad within a given geofence.
Yeah.
Darren, do you know why? Actually, I should say, do you know what person or what entity actually used geofencing in Australia?
Which entity?
Yes, before we did.
Uh, There's a couple on my on the top of my head. One would be the Australian government.
Government, yes, to keep you off the outside of the beaches. Yes.
They used it to
And
spy on you
Yeah.
during COVID.
yeah,
And
well, and you
it's
think
a totally an unethical use of what we do.
well, and I am in Melbourne, which is will go down in history until the next pandemic as the longest lockdown city on the planet.
We
And
we we didn't obey. We did not
well,
obey lockdowns.
you did not.
We did
No.
not.
Well,
We actually
well,
met at an illegal party. It was the party was illegal. And
and
we and my friends
There's a
we
lot of people there. It was a house party.
yeah,
A lot
it
of
was
people.
totally crowded and we didn't obey. Obviously,
there was no
the
social
government is
distancing.
not filled with experts. Any government is generally filled with morons.
Well, yeah, but and what I'm really glad as we're talking about this is I don't think anybody from the Victorian government listens to my podcast because only intelligent people listen to this
Exactly.
podcast.
Exactly.
But
Pensioners, I think that's what they're called, right? Is
I'm
that what you guys
undercover
call them?
anyway.
Government workers, pensioners? Yeah, they're not listening to podcasts.
well, it's actually a really interesting thing when you talk about spying, and I know that what you guys do, it's all ethical because the amount of information that's now readily available and how much marketing agencies and businesses know about consumer habits and stuff like that. You just have to look at the retargeting on Facebook and Google and things like that.
Yeah, and they have your
Yes.
name.
Well, yeah, and
They have their name, so you're in a walled garden in that point.
mm,
With you're just going against everybody in that system instead of who your ideal customer is. And
yeah,
that's so important to know. So
yeah,
even Google is the same. They're all walled gardens. You're making them rich. You need to
mm,
make yourself rich
yeah,
and your business grow.
absolutely. So let's delve a little deeper because as you were talking, I'm thinking, okay, the local pizzeria down in my local town here. Right now, they might do some local advertising on Facebook. Sometimes they do. Do they have letter drops in South Jersey? So they do letter drops in
No.
your letterbox.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Direct mail.
Yep.
Yes.
Thinking, what is going on? That is so old school. We've even
It
got
still
And
works
expensive.
though. It's expensive, but
Yeah.
I mean,
It works, but it's
expensive.
expensive.
Mm,
Imagine if you're trying to reach 5,000 homes, it's $1 or $2 a piece of mail. I mean, you're spending quite a lot of money.
I think it's even
that's
more than that because a stamp is now almost $1.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
It's a
some
huge amount.
companies have it down to like $1 a piece of mail, but that's still expensive. You're trying to reach 5,000
Mm,
homes and you can only reach them once.
yes, yes.
Whereas you're
So
fencing, you can reach them more than once.
yes, you can target them, you can use them, you can bombard them with information, right?
They're
And
they're reading an article and then there's our native ads just sitting there.
man, and
It
all of a
just
sudden they
flows
think,
in.
hang on,
Or a
is
banner
there,
ad.
is there a camera watching me? I was just thinking about pizza and how come this pizza ad come up on my phone? What is going on? Um, the reason the question I wanted to ask is people might use direct mail, they might use local advertising in Facebook, they might have like the yellow pages. God forbid the yellow pages still happens, although it's about this thin versus about that thick it used to be. Um, how deep does the work that you do go? So you put a geofence around a pizza shop. You target customers around that particular zone to foot traffic, and there'll only be a certain percentage of customers who may be in the market for a pizza at that particular time. How does that business then utilize that information? Do they work in collaboration with you to then try and figure out, well, where did you hear about us? So they start to gather that information so it enables you to even be more targeted. Or do you have to
So
work in collaboration with that organization to refine the targeting?
there's different ways to do it. One, I just want to make one correction. Everyone is in the market for pizza.
I
Right.
Of
totally
course.
agree on
That
that.
is that
Of
is
course.
right. That is the first premise. Everyone is in the market for pizza. Everyone's in the market for coffee. Everyone's in the market for, Indian food, Chinese food. These are businesses
Yeah.
that are foundational to communities. So everyone,
Sandwiches.
yeah, sandwiches. Everyone's in the market, right?
Yeah.
So the question is how are you trying to communicate with them? And
Mm.
and you mentioned some legacy ways of advertising, which I think are fine. But if you want to make absolutely, the yellow pages, direct mail, these are good and useful, beneficial forms of advertising. but they don't make the most of your dollars.
Mm.
And if you're trying to make the most of your ad money, the location-based way to do that is best, in that at minimum, within a 3 to 5 mile radius of your business, you should be trying to communicate to every mobile user. And as you know, Australia is going cashless, if not
Yeah.
mostly cashless now. So most people are already using their mobile devices for most of their transactions, or at
Mm.
least a card. So why not communicate to these people in a cost-effective manner? Whereas if you're doing direct mail, which again is good, where it costs you $1 or Australian, $1.50 a piece of mail, for that amount of money, you can reach, instead of once, you can reach them perhaps 20 times.
Mm.
Or, a better ad practice would probably try to reach them 10 times throughout the day, try to reach them that many times. But there are certainly better ways to use your ad money, and we believe geofencing is the best because it's location-based and it's interest-based. And for a lot of businesses, everyone absolutely has an interest, particularly when it comes to food on the go, prepared meals like from grocery stores, and certainly things like pizza and coffee.
Coffee to go.
Well, I must admit, and full disclosure here, I'm a coffee snob, right? So I love coffee, and we've got a lot of different coffee shops in Australia. I was in Vegas just before Christmas, and the only coffee I could get was Starbucks, right? Now, there's Starbucks in Australia, but a lot of the Starbucks are actually closing down. Um, Geez, the coffee was not great for the price that I was paying.
Hotel
Just
coffee
saying.
at that point is better.
You
Hotel
need
coffee,
organic coffee
yeah. But hotels often have great coffee now.
poured over
They do.
or press.
Well, the good
Absolutely.
news for coffee shops is that there is decreased supply.
Mm.
So if you own a coffee shop, or if you're a wholesale distributor, now is the time to make your profits and increase your prices because the supply is low.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to ask what might sound like an uneducated question, and I apologize for that. I'm going to ask it
There's
anyway.
no bad questions.
Only the questions you never asked, Barbara, right?
Exactly.
So I'm going down. Not only do I want a local pizza, I want a coffee to go with my pizza, right? So I'm going down to the local store. Um, I know what I want. When I get into the geofence, how does it get presented to me? Am I on an app? So you mentioned before, Barbara, that might be a native ad that comes in, might be on an app, I might be scrolling Facebook. So do you pop it into that? Or are there other methods that you actually make contact to build awareness once I get it within the geofence that says, here's the local pizza shop. They've got a special on the capricciosa, plus you get a half price cappuccino with it.
Well, the banner ad would be specific for our client, right?
Yeah.
Anywhere else, it's not like Uber where they will go. I don't know if you have Uber there, but
Yeah.
delivery system, which you could go to 3 places at once and drive
Mm.
and pick up an order. For geofencing is that marketing is curtailed to that actual customer. So if it was a pizza joint and whatever was that the pizza joint sold, whether it was coffee or not coffee, or pizzas, or maybe not garlic knots or pasta, what would happen is if we made the ad, we would actually put a landing page so it would go into it, show them the direction. It would be a
Mhm.
Google map showing them the direction, the phone number, and kind of where it is. Now, if they're not ready at that moment to go there, we will contact them again within a 90-day campaign, because that's what we do. We do 90-day campaigns. So all those people that we capture in that area of that geofence that has saw the ad, whether
Mhm.
or not it's on the phone, it would look like, the banner ads that go across on the
Yeah.
top. It
Yeah.
would be on the top, the middle, or the bottom, or maybe it would be a native ad inside, say, the Wall Street Journal or some kind of thing that you're reading. And
Mhm.
from that point on, we have the permission, because they're in an app or they're on the web, because they're already open with their location device. And then we would follow them for 90 days. And that time we will touch them a bunch of times. And if they do end up by going into it, the satellite pings us and says, this is the ad that they saw. This is the website or where they were located at. And this is when they came in.
Right.
So it's very detailed. I mean, if Lois Lane wanted to see where Superman was, she could just geofence his phone booth if there's some still around, just to let you know.
There are, and
It's
not
very
a lot of them.
precise.
Yeah, and not a lot of them in Australia have phones with them. They're more internet repeaters or Wi-Fi repeaters. That's
Oh,
what Telstra have used.
interesting.
Yeah,
They reused them for that.
yeah, because they had so many great locations, so nobody was using the payphones anymore. So they used it as the Wi-Fi hotspot. So as
Oh,
That's great.
as an
Smart.
amplifier.
yeah, I like the fact that they repurposed it.
Yeah, because it's like they've got the real estate. So it's just like
Hmm.
the Australia Post, just like the American postal system will have a post box in within I think within a kilometre of every household in Australia. There's a post box or some ridiculous statistic like that, which means if you think about the real estate, some smart people could utilize that to build a big network such as a geofence, right? And be able to target specific people within that area. So,
Yeah.
Barbara, as you were talking, I'm thinking, okay, so if I understand this correctly, a business can then capture the information within that, and you can repurpose over a period of 90 days and drip feed information about that particular business to hopefully build interest, to at least
Yes.
build awareness, so that they can then go in and buy the pizza, get the coffee, buy the tarp, whatever the case might be. I
Yes.
wanted to also ask the question in relation to the geofencing technology and the campaigns you run. Do you also have the capability to do what we call the just in time? So when somebody walks into or goes into a geofence, is there an opportunity to run a campaign where you actually capture them in that moment and say, oh, we've noted, and you're not going to say, we've noticed you've just come into our geofence. How about you walk 15 paces, turn left and do a bit of a swirl and go into this particular store? But can you target just in time to try and capture people when they're in the fence itself?
So yes, because it's a bidding system. So once they walk into the geofence and then they open the app, at that moment shows to the satellite that that app is open. So we actually bid for that space in that app, so we can contact them. The
Mm.
only other way that people do this is the beacons, and where you're by like a Verizon store or something and they hit you because you have that app actually on your phone. But
Yeah,
this is not the same. It's different because we're hitting any app that's open in that polygon
yeah.
that we.
Okay.
Yep.
And does any of your customers use things like text message to send to build awareness, or is it more the app based where you actually said what you just said there is you actually bid for space?
We bid for space.
Yeah, okay.
Space. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the difference because when I go into certain areas, Telstra, the biggest telecommunications carrier here, will say, "Oh, you've come into this area. We're now doing some work," and they just ping you and think, "Okay, how'd they know that?" Obviously, they're using cellular data to then triangulate and send that message. So it's a slightly different approach.
Yes.
Sure. So if there was a regional business with multiple locations, we can build an app for them. And then when their customers are within a X mile radius of their vicinity, then
Yeah.
we could ping those devices with a message, with some sort of display ad. Text messaging is a great tool to use.
Hmm.
Particularly, you can get their information at your point of sale. So if
Yeah.
you're the kind of business that has a digital point of sale, text messaging is acquire that legally acquire that number by having them opt in. And then,
Yeah.
the open rate is something like 94 to 97%. So
Yeah.
it's an excellent tool to use, but that would be a follow-on once we send you someone. So
Hmm.
geofencing gets them in the door, and then there are multiple ways like to build out CRMs or other sales processes so
Hmm.
that you are recommunicating with your customer after you acquire them.
Yeah. So the question I wanted to ask from that is how deep do you then go with your clients in terms of your engagement? Because if you think about the geofencing technology, I'm building awareness, I'm feeding that, or at least encouraging people within that fence to go to that particular store, that particular business. And then the business would be doing their own research to ask the customers things like, so where do you hear from us? What brought you in today? Do you work with the organization around a campaign to help turn that into regular customers? And how do you measure from a business's point of view the return on investment?
the first question is about repeat business and, how do we know? Well, the great thing about geofencing is we're able to give each phone a unique identifier, and then we can see if they're a repeat offender. Do we consult clients with retention? Uh, gen Generally, we're tasked with bringing in new people and not remarketing their existing customer once we acquire it. But we are measuring over each 90-day period how
Mm.
many repeat visits we're getting. A lot of our businesses are true small businesses, mom and pop owned companies.
Yeah.
Uh, at most, they might own, 10 to 30 different locations. That's still a very small business.
Yeah.
And they're just happy that we're continually sending them new visits each month. Some of our clients are getting upwards of 1,000 new customers a month, so across their 30 locations.
Wow.
So yeah, it's 1,000 GPS verified visits per month.
Yeah.
So that's quite a heavy lift as it is, and it's possible to engage us for further services, but we enjoy being experts in foot traffic, and we
Yeah.
prefer to leave the retention to somebody else.
So what you're saying there, Ernesto, is if you're delivering 1,000 unique visitors to a business each month, you've done your job. You've literally brought the horse to the water. Now it's up to the business to try and entice that horse to drink.
Yes. So if you think about it from an agency standpoint,
Yeah.
we're not generalists.
Yeah.
We're specialists. Are we
Yeah.
capable of anybody, is capable of running a Facebook campaign, and anyone, literally anyone who speaks English or doesn't speak English can run a Google campaign.
Mm.
But there are very few experts in the world on satellite GPS-based advertising.
Mm.
And since we have that rare knowledge, we focus on what we love, which is driving foot traffic.
Yeah.
And could we provide those services? We're just not interested in it, really.
Yeah. I mean, and you're just like when you're in the medical profession, you'll become an expert in that particular device and you double down on that and you become the expert. Same thing with geofencing. So
If you're a hand surgeon, which I have expertise in, working in hand surgery,
yeah.
we're not going to focus on total knee replacements. And in
No.
fact, when I was a med rep, I focused on Dupuytren's contractures, which are more likely in Australia, by the way, because many of you have Viking blood, and Dupuytren's contractures are
Well,
genetically tied to people with Viking blood. So we
yes.
would use a process called needle aponeurotomy to use a bevel up of a needle to break up the band under local anesthesia and manipulate the hand straight and then dynamically splint it so that the hand was flexible post-op. So that is quite different than doing knee replacements. So you
Yeah.
don't want a guy who does 1,000 hand surgeries a year, to do your knee replacement, unless this is the apocalypse. And since it's not the apocalypse, you want people like us to be specialists in what we do and send you foot traffic. And then,
Absolutely.
the internals of your business, you should have your employees focused on customer retention.
Totally. And for those of us who don't have Viking blood, we're convicts, so that's okay.
Yes. That's what's great about Australia. So you guys should have been more disobedient naturally during COVID. We're surprised you weren't.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
what was
there
wrong
was
with you guys?
there was to tell you what, there was a lot of disobedient people.
Good.
How's this? We had pregnant ladies getting arrested in their home for potentially inciting violence against the government on things like Facebook, right?
Yes.
It went nuts. Anyway,
Yeah.
and I'm sure our friendly politicians were using the geofencing technology to identify
They
that
were.
person.
Yeah, they certainly were. But what we love about it is it's democratizes communication.
Yeah,
So geofencing falls outside of the censorship of Facebook, and I don't care what Zucker Schmuck says.
And it
yeah,
evens the playing field for the smaller, mid-sized business with the corporations. We're actually slaying the corporations cut by cut, taking their business away because we will draw a geofence around your competition. And
yeah,
actually,
Including the big box guys. Yeah.
absolutely 100%. That's part of our verticals that we do. And we invested a ton of money in all the data that you get when you log into our system and actually see our dashboard, and the data that you get about your business is incredible.
we went more than the extra mile, self-critical in terms of the kind of data we offer,
Yeah.
because the quality of information is very important to us and to the client.
We're data driven. You know, we've been in the medical industry and it's
And
important. And with
it's
business, you want to know what your business is doing.
well, absolutely. And the question I was going to ask you in terms of your ideal customer, because you've mentioned a lot of the mums and pops type businesses. I'm thinking this is an ignorant question, but I'm assuming the geofencing technology would apply itself to more the bricks and mortar type organizations. Can the technology also be used for non-brick and mortar when you're trying to capture certain audiences? And if so, how does that play out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
Um,
drive website traffic all the time.
so there's a whole world out there outside of Google.
Is it?
Bing, yeah, Bing is one of those universes, and Bing has an amazing co-pilot. It's AI powered. We're able to use keywords within the Bing universe to reach people based on the things that they're reading on their computer, contextual things. So if you're a clinician and you're looking for patients, if you're a clinician and you're looking for information about other interventions and procedures that are out there, if you own a home service company and you are looking to reach other professionals to collaborate with, for example, plumbers work with HVAC people, who work with
Mm,
engineers, who work with contractors, there's a whole universe outside of the Google universe where you can reach people on a C-suite level, simply by the information that they're consuming outside of the Google universe.
mm,
So we are certainly able to drive web traffic. For example, in the US right now, we're running erectile dysfunction ads, and we're specifically looking for patients who are debilitated by the fact that they're not able to procreate.
Because
mm.
most the people are on 5 medications or more,
Yeah,
which affects you. We're also doing a Social Security disability get back to work program.
yeah,
So we're able to reach people at a deeper level based on the things that really impact them and based on the things that they're reading, whether it's, whether we're looking for patients or whether we're looking from a B2B professional to professional standpoint. Geofencing and pairing location-based advertising with contextual information just opens the world of communication up
yeah,
to professionals.
And we can do franchises. We're already starting that for franchise businesses and upward. It's just been growing tremendously at the time where right now we need it. We need
yeah,
to grow. Small, mid-size, even large businesses are the fabric of our countries, and we need to help them. And we need to
yeah.
help them grow fast.
So, um, you've been in business. Was it formed during COVID or just post-COVID?
It was formed during
And COVID.
COVID.
During COVID. Okay. So, in the work that you do, helping businesses drive their effectiveness, increase their foot traffic, hopefully help them with their conversions and their effectiveness around marketing. Um, a logical question for me, and that's how my brain obviously works, is you're doing all this fantastic work. How have you guys gone about, and have you used your own technology to build your own business, to build the awareness of what you can provide to your customer base?
Yeah.
So we do a lot of education. I don't know how many podcasts we've done this year, perhaps 30 or more. I'd have to check.
Yeah.
But we find long form education in terms of talking about different ways to apply our methodology and technology to help businesses has been most beneficial. Um, so podcasting has really been our number one.
Mm,
Just single podcasts can reach 10,000 people. Some of our podcasts have reached between 8 and 10,000 people.
yeah.
It's the technology that's been around a long time, but not for the masses.
Yeah.
And we have to educate them to understand what the technology is because
Mm.
we could go out. Somebody asks, "What do you do?" And we say geofence. They look at you like,
What's that?
okay.
Right.
Is that
So
like an electric fence?
You know what? It is
well,
actually an electric fence if you're a
it's like
dog owner.
dinner, right? We want them coming in instead of trying to keep the dog from going out. But
Right. We want to let the dogs loose.
maybe we don't
Yeah.
want to let the customers out. Maybe we could keep them in. We'll figure that one out next now.
So we employ Ogilvy's. If you ever read Confessions of a Madman, or I think it's Madman or Adman. I forget which one it is. I think it's Adman, Confessions of an Adman. And I'm mixing it up with the show Mad Men,
Yeah.
but which is a brilliant show, by the way, and the evolution of John Draper from an arrogant, conquest the whole world to a humbled man who, I don't know, do you know the character Don Draper?
I haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
So Don Draper was the character is brilliant. It's the epitome of a salesman. He is everything that you want in a salesman. But it turns out that during the war, his character assumed the identity of a dead man because he, in his mind, was born a loser. That's the
Mm,
way he perceived himself. And he took the opportunity of his dead friend. He took the name of his dead friend who had a better name than him, and then just transcended, he transcended, he embodied this ultimate salesperson that just no one could say no to. And over the evolution of his character, he realized that it was a one-way street. He was getting
mm,
what he wanted. Of course, he was getting sales for his clients. This character had the biggest clients on Madison Avenue, which is, for those who don't know, the advertising universe of the world is
mm,
founded in America. It's Madison Avenue in New York. He became the king of Madison Avenue, but he realized that his success was a one-way street through failed marriages and things like that. And he accepted and even confessed his fraud, and he evolved to this person who you would really admire.
mm,
So Ogilvy and this character Don Draper, they're very much aligned in terms of being data driven, but the evolved character of Don Draper being an honorable, honest man, because this character came full circle. And he employed the long form of advertising, which is don't be afraid to use too many words. Don't be afraid to go long form. So that's kind of what we employ. We're honest
mm.
in what we do. We employ long form advertising, which is educational podcasts.
Yeah.
We've talked about using geofencing before, but we have felt that in terms of building relationships, because the information that's part of geofencing is so dense, we feel that long form is best. But we certainly think about all the time, why don't we, in certain cases, turn on our own spigot, turn our own garden hose on and grow our own garden using geofencing.
Yeah.
It just so happens because we're educating sales leaders and we're educating people who are already quite successful in their business.
Yeah.
They need a quick fix, and that quick fix is often website traffic conversions and/or foot traffic. So
Yeah.
that's how we do things.
Nice. Nice. So I'm conscious of time, and we're nearly on the hour. For people who are listening to this, sales leaders, people in business, and they're thinking, our marketing campaigns are not necessarily having the cut through that we would like to. What are some things they need to be thinking about in relation to improving their conversions, improving their, I guess, their foot traffic numbers? When they look at things like geofencing, what are some, I guess, some key metrics that you, as part of your education process, share with businesses that need to be aware of?
Hmm.
One of the things we have done for many businesses is run foot traffic studies. So
Hmm.
we'll look at your location, even before you buy it. Often we'll be consulted to look at locations, to do studies to determine what's the health of this trade area. What's the health? This is United States only, by the way. So
Yeah.
sadly, we don't have this power in Australia. We have different powers we could talk about in a moment. But in the United States, we'll often look at the entire trade area, not only the building that you're buying or the business that you're already operating in, but we'll look at the foot traffic health of surrounding businesses. And that's important to know. We need to know if your area is blighted or if it's healthy.
Mm.
And based on that information, we'll make different recommendations. So the first thing we do is look at what's going on the ground from a holistic manner, and then offer our perspective about what needs to be done to either take advantage of that great foot traffic, or, hey, you're swimming against the tide. Here are things that we might be able to do, and here are things that we certainly can do to
Yeah.
induce and drive foot traffic, despite the fact that your area might be blighted. And then the second thing we do is make sure that the promise that our client is offering their community is realistic and can be fulfilled.
Yeah.
So we've been blessed to deal with clients that have a high degree of character and who are always concerned about not over promising. So, in our consultations, we make sure that the promise offered is the promise fulfilled so that the customer experience is complete.
Mm. It's really important. As you were talking, Ernesto, I'm thinking of a client that I had uh, that she sells premium watches through retail chains, and some of her stores have been suffering some declines in terms of foot traffic, and geofencing would be a classic, I guess, methodology to try and understand that, and then identify some trends and put some mitigation strategies in place.
Absolutely. So for example, if you have a product in Whole Foods or if you have a product at a jewelry store, there's no reason why, as the product owner, that you can't support the sales at the retail locations that you're in. So for example, one of our clients is Electrico Mezcal. They're a legit from Oaxaca, Mexico, mezcal, artisanal, meaning they use the strict, almost with no electricity. If I'm not mistaken, the whole product's made without electricity.
The
And
horse-drawn carriage.
right. It's horse strong. So we're
Very quick.
able to support their sales in restaurants and in retail locations. And that's what they're doing on their own. That's what they've done on their own
Mm.
through geofencing, regardless of what the liquor store or the restaurant or the hotel's doing to support
Yeah.
sales. You can take it upon yourself as the owner of a company
Yeah,
to support
with
retail
events.
locations.
Yeah, we've done the events for them, and we've sent traffic to those events. You can actually target events that you would want, say a business event or some kind of sporting event. You can target all those events to sell your product or to push them in that direction.
Well, I just like what you said before, the targeting for Burger King and McDonald's. I could just think this big business conference targeting all of those people and
Yes.
advertising a small business. Hey, don't worry about going here. Come over here.
Little cuts.
So that is a very good point. Starting off in when I was a commercial photographer doing marketing and advertising for another agency working in the beauty industry, these vegan indie beauty brands were able to take on the La Mers of the world. They were able to take on these bigger brands because they're big targets.
Yeah.
And through a relationship I had with a woman who was at La Mer, she told me that companies like you kill us by 1,000 cuts a day, a
Yeah.
1,000 little tiny cuts. So the bigger the target, the better opportunity for the small business operator to create a niche for
Mm.
themselves.
And maybe get bought out.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of
Potentially.
opportunities. We've had clients. We had one client living in his laundromat, and he was in Daytona. And that's actually how we got into podcasting, because he recommended that we go on this podcast because he told how he was living in his laundromat. He started off as a hedge fund. He thought he was going to get rich by building his laundromat.
And
He was
store
struggling.
it.
He couldn't afford his apartment anymore. He was living in his laundromat. He didn't tell us what his financial situation was when he engaged with us.
Nope, he scraped up every dollar to market with us.
We drove
Yeah.
so much foot traffic that everyone in this entire strip mall was like, "Bro, what are you doing? Like, what's going on?" And he basically referred them all to us, and he said, Cullari and Wardell is sending us all this foot traffic. Fast forward 1 year, and he sold his laundromat for multiple millions.
Yes.
So he went from living in it to selling it for multiple millions. And it's all because we drove a significant amount of foot traffic to his little laundromat in Daytona, Florida. So
Wow.
if you're a company of some means and if your competition is Goliath with a couple shiny stones called geofencing,
We could
you
take
could
them on.
and you can build quite a nice niche business for yourself.
I think it's a phenomenal piece of technology. So as we wrap this up, if you're looking into, because we're at the beginning of 2025, are you seeing any big trends, or is there a big vision you've got for 2025 that we can finish this podcast off with?
Well, we have an opportunity that we're making available. It's not live yet, but we're making it possible so that any small business can
And
plug and play with our technology and start driving a significant amount of business to their
without us managing,
right, without us being in the
we're
loop.
developing it now. We spent a ton of resources to put this together. And it's not quite ready yet, but it will be. And it's going to make a significant amount of impact in that industry.
And is that going to be North America or is that globally?
So it'll be available globally.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
For sure. Australia is definitely always going to be on our list of countries to
The
help.
three.
We
We started there,
Right.
The
in
Viking
the
state.
last year.
yeah, the right. The inmate state and the Viking state, yeah.
We want you guys to grow. Forget the
Absolutely.
government using it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So the future is very bright for location-based advertising. Even if you're a large company and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend every month,
You still want that
you
traffic.
still want precision traffic.
Yeah.
You still want the right people. You still want your bespoke audience to be doing business with you. So no matter how large your company is or how small your company is, you want to make the most use of your advertising dollars by communicating directly to the people that would appreciate and most benefit from your services.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. So, hey, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Greatly appreciate this on a Tuesday in the East Coast of the US. For people who are listening and would like to know more about what you guys do, but also connect, and they won't be able to connect with you, Barbara, unless you set up a LinkedIn account, but you might be on other platforms. Where's the best place for them to connect with you and learn a little bit more about what you do at Cullari and Wardell?
At our website, cullarimedia.com, CULLARIMEDIA.com.
Love it. Brilliant. Excellent. Any final words of wisdom before we bring this to a close? It's been a phenomenal conversation.
My words of wisdom would be to subscribe to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Absolutely.
It would be then to listen to this podcast at least 3 times. So you get a master
Maybe
class.
4.
Maybe 4 times to get a master class
even number.
in geofencing, because it's very important. It is the future of advertising. And
check out our website with all our videos explaining geofencing, just in case you don't get it, just to reinforce it, because everyone's trying to explain it to people. And I think also make sure that you're on top of your business and those low-hanging fruits coming in. Make sure your service is really good, and make sure that you're on top of all your SEOs and all that kind of stuff that you need to be on top of.
I think that's a great point, Barbara, because you can have lots and lots of specific, niched, identified potential clients coming into your business. But if you've got a really crappy sales process, if you've got a really crappy customer experience process, then it's going to not work. So you've got to have both. So hey, so Ernesto, Barbara, and your massively professional setup, I've got to say. So for people who are not,
we thank you for every camera angle.
Look at this. We've got multiple camera. I'm sitting here thinking I'm on some sort of professional daytime television show. We've got different camera angles. No, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for being on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Darren. We really had a nice time.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.